I know.
Oh my gosh.
We chatted a little bit.
No, Danny's the best.
Have you ever done ayahuasca?
Great.
Mm-mm.
Neither. Wait.
Yeah, I was
I'm
recently
taking my
talking
time.
about that. I was like, I draw the line at shitting myself.
And
like
throwing it. I'm just like, I've
throwing up is fine. Like,
but like
if it
shitting
is,
myself while I'm
Shitting and
high,
throwing
while
up.
I'm with people, I just like I won't even be able to go into the journey. I'll be mortified.
I would want to be like in Peru with
Yeah.
a shaman.
Which
Yeah.
even so sounds scary. Like I might be shitting myself in the Peruvian jungle. Like I don't know.
Right, in a treehouse somewhere.
Yeah, I'm like in the woods. Like
But what a story. Do it for the plot.
Like this.
How you feeling, beautiful?
I'm good.
That's good. You should always feel good when you're around me.
Should. You better.
You better. What's goody, everybody? It's another beautiful episode of Love Like This. I'm the one and only half of this beautiful love cast, Orlando Roy, a.k.a. Hoochie Daddy himself. And I'm sitting right next to me, my beautiful almost wife-to-be, the one and only.
Jamila Map.
Ooh, a.k.a.
Hoochie Mom.
Yay.
What's wrong with you, silly guy?
And I want to say to everybody black, if you're listening to this love cast right now, turn it off. Because this is the day to relax. Don't do anything.
Know.
You know what? Actually,
Turn
turn
it
it back on. Turn it back on and only listen to this today. But happy Juneteenth, everybody. Happy Juneteenth, baby.
Thank you. Happy Juneteenth.
Yeah, congratulations on being born black.
Thanks. You know, it's right in alignment. Today's Juneteenth. Saturday is my birthday.
Saturday's the big one.
Hey.
It's also a full moon. It's
it
also the summer solstice.
Talk about
It's
it.
also the cusp of magic.
Meow.
So I just want to say I'm a magical black woman.
Yay. Did you get your black powers again this year?
My powers upgrade every year, but yeah, they've been upgrading ever since that year in 2020. They gave us the powers. It's just been upping ever since.
So what's your black superpower this year?
Resilience and vision.
Resilience and vision.
I visualize it and then it actualizes.
My black superpower this year is audacity.
I think that's your superpower every year. It seems to be
I was
your
born like
thing.
this, but especially this year, I'm getting into like the audacity of things, honing into a special power that we aren't necessarily privileged or blessed with, and so we have to take control of the audacity that we have.
You know what? Because one thing white people have without any care is audacity.
Right.
I'm envious.
Yeah, and I realized that the closer it gets to Juneteenth, the power gets stronger. Because I remember one time there was a white lady blocking this parking spot, and I was like, she has such audacity to block the one parking spot that we can get into to go to the sushi. Remember the sushi restaurant we were going to? Okay, I'm gonna tell you the story. She was blocking this parking spot, and then I was like, she has such audacity to block it when she doesn't even need to. So I rolled down the window. I said, "You're blocking the fucking parking spot," and that was my audacity. And she got up and moved that shit. And I was like, now I'm honing into my.
Was it necessary for you to curse at that poor white
No,
lady?
but it's Juneteenth, and what other time I'm gonna
You know
have a
people
time to
can't
tell a
drive
story.
in L.A. White people, nobody could drive in L.A.
Your birthday's coming up. Yeah, congratulations on another revolution around the sun.
Thanks.
You're welcome, baby. I'm not gonna say how old you're turning because obviously you're turning 21.
Duh.
Yeah, of course. But we do have a birthday party that we're throwing for you.
Oh yeah, we're having a play party on July 6th.
Yeah, July 6th.
In LA. So if you're in LA and you haven't experienced it yet or you want to experience, we are partnering with the one and only Susia NYC, and it's going to be a good time. It's been a fun time. This will be our third one in LA, and it's quite an experience. There's live performers, there's kink stations. It's a nice intro to the tantalizing lifestyles of the sexy and open.
Yeah, and I truly love what we're doing over here, especially with the play party aspect, because I look at it as this is not a regular play party, and it's not a regular party at that. Like you get the live DJ aspect, you get the bar, you get the dance floor, and everything like that. And then, unless it's a party aspect that makes it so much fun. And then we mixed in and had Michaela at the last one, the mushroom. What do you call her, mushroom mama?
Mushroom mama.
The mushroom mama, right? And she served soup, which I realize is a great addition for a party. But then you have the kink stations, which is like sensory impact. And what I saw and we put together last party that I love so much was the motherfucking massage person that was there. You got a massage? Yes, the massage person that was there was like, you can get your kinks off, and then you can get your kinks knotted out. You like that? That one just came off the top of the head.
Okay, got it. That's very clever. Lizzie Jeff is DJing. We have some live performers. It's fun. It's quite the time.
It's a very good time. So come celebrate Milah's birthday.
And it's my all-time favorite. It's a costume party because and this party is Midsummer's Eve theme. So I'll be dressed as my actual self as a fairy, a night fairy. So, that's always fun. I enjoy a costume.
Yeah. So fill out your vetting form because we are all about consent and safety for the people that are attending. So yeah, fill out the vetting form. And we'll look at your vetting form, send you a little ticket link, and you buy your ticket, come and celebrate my beautiful Milah's 21st birthday.
Are you going to buy me a cake?
Oh, shit. You know what I want? I want that person that jumps out the cake.
Okay, well.
That'd be fun.
Good
and
luck.
they give you a lap dance. Like, you'll be sitting down, and I bring out the cake, and they jump out and jump right onto you and just start whining. Maybe it'll be me.
Okay, well, good luck fitting your ass in a cake.
Yeah, this fat ass. This butt is big.
Anyway.
Go ahead. Introduce her.
Today's a very special day because we have our very good friend here. And, I love having guests. We haven't had that many guests. And this month we are introducing the spiritualist because spiritualism, is that a word? Spiritualism.
It is now, right?
Spiritualism in a relationship is important. And it's something that I think as the world evolves, people are seeking spiritualism.
Run with it, baby.
Not religion.
Yeah.
And it's, it's nice to have a little insight to the things that make us compatible that are sometimes bigger than ourselves. So our first guest for this month is our very good friend, my witchy woman here, Bruna, intuitive, astrologist, writer, and just, bad bitch.
Yeah, thank you. That encompasses everything. Right, yeah. It's good to be here again.
Yes, welcome back, friend. We've actually sat in this room and spoken before, but always happy to have you. And I really love doing this kind of month of spiritual compatibility because aside from religion of just telling us hey, just respect and find somebody that's under the same religion, with the spiritual component of it, you can find, regardless of religion, regardless of your walk of life, you can come together. And with charts like this and sitting with somebody that can properly articulate it to you, you could come to find out not only where your compatibility is, but where your compatibility isn't, and you could work on it.
Right.
Right. Just a little spoiler alert for our next episode coming up. We did a compatibility chart with
Danny Santos.
Danny fucking Santos of Santos Crystal Vision. I had his name in my head. You know when you have somebody's name in your head all day and it's time to come, you forget it.
Yeah.
Anyway, one of the things that he was telling us is that there are parts of our chart where we're a rose bush or a rose, whereas there's thorns on the vine. But if you can get past all those thorns, then it's this beautiful red rose, and we're gonna have an amazing relationship.
I thought for sure he was gonna tell us we're super compatible. It's gonna be so easy. We're meant from the heavens, and he's just if you can work it out, it's gonna be great.
Yeah. But I mean that's important too, and I think it's also a great example to set for couples because I think a lot of people use astrology to cheat the system and sort of see ahead of time. Is this worth the work? Is this gonna work? No. Oh, then let me just dip out.
Right.
And for me, that's really sort of diluting the magic that comes from learning astrology, which is an ancient study. To me, it's a language. I always say that. And so it's not necessarily a cheat code to divert the work that's necessary. It's showing you where your weaknesses are and what your strengths are so you have the tools to do the work if you want to. So with couples especially, what I love about what we're going to be talking about is you two do have some really challenging aspects. Yet, I think it's a great teacher because at the end of the day, what I try to remind people with astrology is it's not going to tell you the conclusion of the relationship. The conclusion of the relationship, the compatibility, that foundation of it is dependent on whether or not both people are willing to do the work. That's it. And I've had that personal experience of whether it's platonic or romantic relationships, where of course, I'm running the charts because I'm like, let me just see what's going on. And there will be some where it's very harmonious and maybe a couple challenging things, but the other person just wasn't willing to do the work. So even if it's just a little bit of hardship, but the other person's not willing, it's not going to work. Meanwhile, you can have two people who you might have a couple challenging aspects, but if they're both dedicated to doing the work, that's going to be a relationship that has a capability of surviving and thriving, because not only is it that you're both willing to do the work, you're also learning things that other couples may not have had to learn because it comes easy for them. And that knowledge can be really useful to you. So there is a lot of power within the challenging aspects. And because I do a lot of shadow astrology and more like psychological astrology, I try to remind people of that, because it can feel defeating sometimes to hear like, oh yeah, you got this and this, which isn't always the easiest, or this, and it's like, fuck, when am I going to catch a break? But if you just reframe your perspective on it and you're like, oh, this is actually a superpower, since we're talking about superpowers, that's in my chart, but it's not just handed to me. I got to work for it.
Right.
And if you're willing to do that, then you can embody it and utilize it. So.
Yeah. And one of the things that Danny really pointed out was like the work is worth it with us. Like, it's not just like, hey, you got some challenging aspects and like, y'all really got to have to like push through for this one. It's like, no, if you put in the effort to it, like what you're going to get back is like 2 times to 10-fold, like more of the energy back. So
yeah, there's certain differences that are just fundamental where it may just be super misaligned. And then there are differences where you guys, which is what I sort of picked up with your charts, and I'll explain more about what we're going to get into in a second, where it's just, there might be a different language that's being spoken. And so it's just a matter of recognizing that, where we may have to take a little bit more time and effort to understand the other person as opposed to making them understand us, so that we can get to that sort of balance.
Before we do get into it, though, we're going to talk a lot about us, which is definitely my favorite topic, us. But how does one get into this space of like finding charts, like for yourself? Like, how did you get into this?
I've always been into all of this, like tarot, palmistry, astrology, anything mystical was something that I was interested in. When it came to astrology, it really intimidated me because anyone who studied astrology, it's so expansive. And I'm the type of person where I love research. Like, I love to nerd out about stuff, which is why I love astrology, because I can learn this for the rest of my life and there's still more to learn. I'm never going to stop learning about astrology. And at the same time, I can also hold myself to a standard that's unrealistic. So I was hesitant to call myself an astrologer or offer readings, because in my mind I was like, no, I have to master this before I can offer it to anybody. And then there was the other voice that was like, girl, like,
you know it,
then you'll never do it,
right?
Because
you'll never know everything. There's always more to learn.
Information hoarding over here.
So honor that, just understand that you're always going to be a student, but you can also be a teacher at the same time when it comes to the areas that really fascinate you. So in the beginning, it was like I was trying to be, I think, what I thought everyone expected me to be as an astrologer. And then at one point I was like, throw it away. Like, there's thousands of astrologers everywhere who can do the, basic birth chart analysis, whatever, which is great. What are my unique gifts and tools that I can implement into this and use this as a tool, which is what it is. This, the cards, everything else are just tools and vehicles to help get the message across. So for me, I love shadow work. Like, shadow stuff is my shit, and it's also in my chart. So I was like, okay, this is something from my personal journey that I feel really strongly about. It's the conversation I always want to have with people, sometimes whether or not they want to have it.
They're like, bitch, I don't know you. Get out of my face.
Right. I'm like, hi, nice to meet you. So let's talk about your deepest traumas. How's that been affected? What sign are you? All of these different things. And again, depending, some people can take that as, dang, like, you're trying to just fit me in a box or analyze me. And for me, my intention is always just to better understand your roots, which I think is what this gives you. Astrology to me is the equivalent of like the sort of manual that comes with you fresh out the box. It's like the directions to understand this person. That's also not to say that it's set in stone. You know, all of this evolves and shifts as you grow, evolve, and shift. But these are sort of like the standards and what is the word? It starts with an R.
Standards and...
Dang, I hate when I forget words. I'm going to think about that all day.
I know, I hate that too.
But either way, it's sort of like that manual that comes with you to better understand how to function and why you might show up the way that you do. So I used it initially for myself because I was really deep in my own journey and I needed evidence in some way. I needed tangible things that I can look to, psychological things, because my comfort zone is intellectual
Capricorn.
stuff. Right. Well, it's my Virgo South node more than anything. So I'm very comfortable with let me gather the evidence, research, dissect it,
sit with it.
Right. Extract what I need from it and then make it make sense. That works to a certain point. And then, of course, it can be debilitating at another point. But it's been really helpful for me to better understand why I react to things the way I do or what energies are playing out or why certain people trigger certain parts of me, you know. So I used it as a tool for me. And then the guidance I've always gotten was, we're going to put you through some shit. You're going to learn through it. And then you have to take that knowledge and teach other people. So I'm like, okay, but there was always in the past this fear of showing up as a teacher because I was always in my mind thinking like, but I still have so much to learn. So who am I to teach? But again, it's recognizing that the information you have is valuable to the people who need it. So just allow yourself to remain open and seen so that those people can find you. And those are the people you need to work with. So that's sort of where it started. And now I'm in a place where I'm really learning to be comfortable in my gifts and offerings and being able to share that because I've seen how it's been impacting people.
Well, round of applause to you. And I really feel like you do know your shit because when you and Danny met for the first time in person, you guys like hit it off immediately and they just started running off charts and planets and nodes and there was like, yeah, so you're kind of like this, which means like this, and like, okay, we could be friends here, but we might need to stay away from this. I was like, damn, like in 5 minutes they were like, oh yeah, we know you, I know you.
I feel like astrology, I just, you know, I think we're in a time in the world, like it's strange times, but like do you want to know more about yourself? Do you have the desire to dig deeper and to acknowledge the places that are like there are difficulties? Like even for me, I think in my past life I was a Virgo, and as I get older, I feel that coming up, and I'm like controlling in ways and like analytical in ways, and even like shut up, and even like you're talking about astrology, like how you approached it, wanting to understand people's like, you know, their shadows. I'm always like, I always gather people's information just based on the worldly realm. Like, what's your relationship with your parents? You know, like I'm always looking at the entire picture. Like, you know, they have this issue because of this. Like, I'm always trying to place people so I can understand them in their fullness. But I do think astrology, like you can dive even deeper into the things you already know about yourself. But then when you have like the information, you can choose. And like you said, like where you judge people or whatever, then you can say, like, this is me coming in this place, and I can go through it by releasing it and understand like this is how I am, and because I've made the steps to dig deeper, I can actually get past that and get to know the person because I know there's this other obstacle in my way, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And it's also recognizing, at least for me, I don't know if you guys are familiar with human design, but I mean, the foundation is I'm into all of it, right? Like I know all of it. I'm at least a little bit. And I'm a projector, and so it's easy for me to see the blind spots, the gaps, the problems that need solutions, and to get the insight for it. And sometimes I've had to reel it back a little bit because it can be pretty jarring and almost invasive for some people because in my mind, it's very analytical in a way of just gathering information. So I'm like, oh, they have this moon, which means they have a Hades moon, which means they probably have a deep maternal wound. I wonder how that's showing up in their life, or if they feel, you know, like it's just this constant conversation, which has nothing to do with the way I see you. It's just like, maybe I need to be a little more sensitive with this thing, or maybe I need to show up, because it is something for me where I try to be very mindful about how I interact with people, and also conscious of the fact that you can't interact with everyone the same. And so taking that extra step, but again, it's better when you have the invitation, when you have that energetic buy-in, which is also why for the offering that I'm going to give an example of with you guys today, which is my relationship alchemy reading, I'm only doing this with both parties present for the reading, because I'm not the one to go to about the person you're wondering about to see what's happening. I'm the person you go to when both of you are like, all right, we got some stuff we got to like figure out, and you're both willing to do that. So I need energetic buy-in from both people, because that's when change happens. You know, we can't expect anything to change if one person wants it and the other one doesn't.
Yes.
So it can be really beautiful in that way. And even I thought of, when you were talking, I thought of a recent trip to Joshua Tree. And I was sitting outside, and it was, you know, when you're in the desert, the stars are insane. And I haven't seen them like that in forever. And I remember sitting in the chair and looking at the stars, and immediately I heard like this is, we're telling you everything in the stars. It's like they showed me almost like, I don't know if you remember in school when they would have that overhead projector and they would put that clear piece of paper on it to project it on the board. And it was like, we laid it over the sky. And if you can learn how to read this, the answers are there. Right. Yeah. And it's almost like Morse code in the sky. You know, it's just like reading that. And when I got that, I was like, whoa, like this is so deep. Like this is way, like you mentioned earlier, bigger than just like, oh my gosh, why do I avoid people? And it's like, actually, there's like deeper things that are probably generational or
absolutely
karmic.
Yeah.
Which we love that.
Don't we love karma? Okay. Tell us about ourselves.
Yeah. So, okay. So the relationship alchemy reading, the way I do it is I use a synastry chart and a composite chart. And what that means is a synastry chart is both of your birth charts together, so I can see where your planets are affecting each other. Like if you have a lot of planets in one sign, I can see what area of life that is really highlighting for Orlando and vice versa. So synastry charts is taking two individual charts and putting them together. The composite chart is really interesting because that is almost like creating a birth chart for the relationship as its own entity. So it's no longer the two individuals, it's the third thing of you two together.
The entity that's created when we come together.
Yeah. And then creating a birth chart for that. So it's like a birth chart for the relationship.
Oh, wow. I never even thought that was a thing.
Oh, yeah. You can pull up a birth chart for anything.
And you know, that's so crazy because in my relationship with Erica, my wife, someone told us, like a little bit earlier on when we started that, when we came together, like an entity was created. So like we'll name her, we'll like, you know, acknowledge her in certain points of, you know, all the time really. But for some reason, I didn't think about that when like in a relationship and like in this relationship that also an entity is created.
Yeah.
And like when you come together, like a different energy is created by that union.
Yeah.
And what that looks like, and that like they also have a birth chart.
Yeah, it's fascinating. There's lots of information you can get from that. And again, I mentioned I love the shadow. So a lot of the things we're going to be talking about, I focus on that. So for those who don't know, the shadow is the repressed parts of yourself. It's the stuff we try to hide in the unconscious, or we have hidden because it's either not accepted, praised, admired, whatever else. It's the parts of ourselves we don't necessarily want other people to see. But because it's in the unconscious, it can really affect your life without you being consciously aware, because it's going to come out regardless. And what I love about doing shadow work type of stuff with couples specifically is relationships is where the shadow comes out to play. Because whether you're aware of it or not, relationships is when you activate each other, so it's going to come out. And I'm not seeing you as my partner anymore. I'm seeing you as the mother who neglected me, the father who abandoned me, the best friend who lied to me. Any substantial relationship is going to be reflected and mirrored by this person who means a lot to you, because they have access to parts of you that aren't necessarily activated by any other person.
Other people don't have access to.
Right, exactly. And so a lot of the work with that, and what I know will sort of come of this type of work and reading, is giving you the sort of clarity so that you can detach it from the individual and recognize, like, oh shit, I'm doing this again. Like, this isn't about you. This is about every other time I felt the way I'm feeling right now because of this situation, and I'm using it to try and rewrite the past, but I'm projecting that onto you and not necessarily what's happening right now. So with that said, I mean, I took all kinds of notes because, again, I love this stuff. Yeah. We may not be able to touch on everything because, again, you can find out so much from these charts. I do these readings in a way where I take traditional interpretations, but I use my intuition more than anything. So I'm not going to go over every placement and whatever else. I highlighted certain things that caught my eye with the synastry chart and the composite chart, and we'll just have a conversation to see what's coming up, and you guys let me know if it resonates, if you've had experiences with that, anything like that. Okay. So let's start with some of the synastry placements that I saw that may bring up some challenges. We can start there. And again, for those who don't know, the birth chart is sort of like a cosmic snapshot of the sky the moment you were born. And it's separated into 12 houses. Those houses represent 12 areas of your life, both personal and sort of your collective self with others. The placements represent parts of yourself. So like the planet placements and things like that. The house that they're in shows you where that energy comes out the most or where it's activated. Now, I'm going to be talking about certain aspects, which is how two planets or placements are interacting with each other. And square is one that you may hear me say a lot, and that is a more challenging aspect because they're at an angle that's not as harmonious. But again, it's one of those things where if you can work through it, there's a gift.
What do you mean square? Is like when it's aligned in a square, like literally that's what it shows.
I believe it's 60 degrees. So it's kind of like, it's one line.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, when you look at birth charts and there's just like all those lines in them. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's one of those, usually a red one, a red line. And so that denotes that the two placements are in a sign which represent a certain fabric of energy, like autopilot energy, that may not necessarily mesh well because the foundational understanding of that energy may be different than each other. So one of the aspects that you guys have in your synastry chart that can be challenging from time to time is that your moons square each other. So what that looks like is that your emotional language is very different. The way that you feel comforted is very different. There is sometimes frequent misunderstandings or mismatched emotional rhythms. So what you may need to feel soothed and comforted and nurtured may be very different than how Milah feels when she's nurtured, soothed. So she may not automatically know how to nurture you because she's nurtured differently, and vice versa. So this can also come out when you have tension and frustration and when your needs aren't met in a specific way because your expectations are different. And then at the same time, it can make a lot of emotional reactivity because it can feel like the other person isn't understanding me. You know, it's like, why can't you just get it? But again, it's taking that extra step of being like, well, because it's a different language. So if you're speaking French and you're speaking Spanish, you can yell at each other the same thing. They're still not going to get what you're saying right. Because it's a different language. And so it just takes time to really practice active listening, and instead of harboring or taking it personal when someone is feeling emotional or reactive about something, not being like, I failed them, I'm doing something wrong, you know, something like that. It's more of, okay, I'm I'm not understanding what it is you need right now. So let's take some time to dig a little bit more and unpack, which requires a lot of empathy and compassion. And again, sometimes it's hard to do that in the thick of it. So it's going to be important to sort of take a pause, especially when it's a highly reactive situation. And remember that you have different emotional responses. You were mothered differently. You were nurtured differently. You have a different idea of what it means to be comforted. So the more that you can understand each other in that regard, the better it will be. So developing healthy communication techniques and avoiding blame and criticism is going to be really important to help heal that aspect. How does that land for you guys?
You want to go first?
Oh, we're going to take turns. Okay. Love that.
I feel like it's true.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, yeah, sometimes we don't be speaking the same language. And as far as like being comforted differently, yeah, I think that comes up too, because I just want it to be over with. I just shut down. I just don't want to be like, just leave me alone. And I can harbor feelings. Like if I'm annoyed at 10 a.m., I'll probably still be annoyed at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Yeah. Whereas he's like, do. I'm like, get the fuck away from me. You know, like, you're acting like everything's fine. It's not. I'll kick you. But I think I acknowledge that, you know, like, and I just think in general, I don't know if like I've been nurtured at all in ways, and so there are things that like are not second nature for me. It's not like my first instinct to do. I will avoid. I will leave. I want to move out of it.
Yeah.
Whereas he wants to talk and shit, and you know, and I'm just like,
not you wanting to talk through it.
Oh no!
How dare you?
Communication.
I'm over it.
God.
We'll talk about it.
I mean, for me, it's like if we're not speaking the same language, what the fuck are we talking about?
Or we're not speaking your language. What the
I'm
fuck
just
are we
like,
talking about?
like I don't really enjoy talking in circles about the same thing.
Right.
I want to say what I want to say. I'm going to tell you how I feel, and then you're going to tell me how you feel, and it's probably not going to be the same, and then let's move forward, because I've come to this place in my adulthood where like if people don't understand me, I just stop talking.
Yeah.
I just say okay.
So with that, a couple things came up while you were talking. One is completely understandable, but also recognizing there are certain people who are worth the effort of trying to figure it out. Stranger on the street, who cares?
Right.
You know? At the same time, I had a vision of something as an analogy, which is if you were in a foreign country and you needed to get to a certain destination and the only person who could give you directions was your partner, you're not going to be like, okay, fuck off. Like, I'll just stay here, because you don't want to be there. You want to get to wherever it is you're going. And if they can help you, then
you have no choice.
You always have a choice, but the choice to help you reach the goal that you want, which is, in this case, harmony, is going to have to be like, okay, we're not speaking the same language, but how might we be able to get around that to still get the point across, or to get what it is we need to know where to go from here? So almost envisioning it in that way of like when you're talking to someone who doesn't know how to speak English, but you need to communicate something to them, you'll start pulling out, you'll draw, you're like, you'll do whatever
Google
you need
Translate,
to do. Right.
Pictures.
Yeah. So it's that intentional effort, which again, some days is harder than others. And it's recognizing that. It's like, I don't have it in me today. But at the end of the day, it's also knowing this person's not going anywhere. So the circles are going to happen regardless if it's not
Resolved.
Handled.
Yeah, I think I realize that, you know, we're all put in like we're like as lovers or whatever, like you're going to be in a new relationship. It's going to bring out new parts of you. And if your instinct when conflict comes up is to abandon ship and, you know, just say, fuck this, then you're going to constantly kind of come into that cycle in every relationship. And then I realized, like, if you desire long-term, you know, relationships, that like the longer you're in it, the more comfortable you get with that person, and those triggers and those shadows are going to come up, because it's just like that's when things become more intense. Of course, like in the beginning, you're like, I don't really know you. There's things that haven't really gotten on my nerves. There's less knowledge to be irritated by. But the deeper you get into a relationship with someone, there's more invested. You are more vulnerable because you are closer to me, and you're activating, wounds that probably haven't been activated by other people than just people super close to you, like parents, and without a lot of times acknowledging that that's where those feelings are coming from. But the more I invest in this relationship, and the more I realize like we're doing this, the more I'm realizing the things in myself that are not really, or like solution based. I see in myself where I'd like, fuck, I just would rather just walk away.
Yeah.
But it's not realistic when you desire long-term partnership. And so I think sometimes people forget the investment in the relationship is that you're really investing in the time to observe and dig deeper into your own wounds, and you have to really be willing and wanting to do that, or else it's easy. I think that's really what it is. It's like my avoidance is not so much that I want to jump ship, but I don't really feel like digging into that in myself. So if you're pissing me off, if you're not understanding, I'd rather just walk away versus digging deeper into saying, oh, this is how I react, and this is something that's coming up for me. And it's like being in a long-term relationship is like the deepest level of therapy you'll do with yourself if you're so willing.
Absolutely. It's a divine assignment.
Yeah.
And even with what you said, it sounds like avoidance may have been a coping mechanism for a long time. And so it makes sense that that's, it's right there, and it's what helped you get through uncomfortable situations. And what you also said, jumping ship also breaks trust, because if the other person is like, well, dang, anytime there's a bump in the road, they're going to dip out, then now I don't feel safe to be vulnerable with you, right? Because the abandonment wounds start coming up. And so, yeah, it can be a tricky.
Now we're just triggering the fuck out of each other.
Right.
It's so funny because I feel as if when it comes to body communication, I got that down pat. But when it comes to like talking communication, there's times I'd be looking at me like, what? Like, huh? How did you even get here with that? And even within communicating, when we like having disagreements, I'll realize that I'll say what I mean or how I feel, and then I have to explain that saying, and then that's how like he's going on. And that was like earlier in the relationship. But yeah, as time goes on, I do feel like I speak like two different languages now, because I have to figure out how I think or feel about something, and then how I have to communicate it so that Milah really understands fully like how I'm trying to come across. And when I remember one time we were having a moment, and I was explaining to her that when I was younger, the reason why like all this communication with like speaking and stuff like that has come to be is because when I was younger, my mom, I live with my mom, so my mom always like shut me down whenever I want to like speak up for myself or say how I felt or stuff like that. So now that I'm in a relationship where I can like be expressive with my voice, I had to tell her that I'm not necessarily speaking because I just want you to get it. It's just that I just never had a time to speak most of my life. So now that I can really like say how I feel, I just want to explain it to you, so that there is an understanding, and then when you react yourself, right, you're not reacting under the understanding of something else, that you actually know how I feel. But when it's like you get shut down or you don't want to have the conversation, it just brings me back to like that, I guess, that mother wound of like not being listened to. And now it's just getting more frustrating. It makes me want to talk more because like you need to listen. I'm almost done.
Well, oh my gosh, so many things. The mother wounds are mother wounding up in here. Like we're going to talk about it. No, it's a beautiful thing. And I love that you brought that up, because not only is it practice for you in expressing yourself. It's practice for you expressing yourself vulnerably to a woman. Because if that was your experience with your mom, which also makes sense because you're a Capricorn moon, which is a sign of a mother wound as well. That's a marker for a deep mother wound. There is a sense of wounding around authority, like your own authority, you know, standing your ground, expressing yourself with your moon sign, and also releasing the rigidity around your emotions, because there can also be a sense with that experience of feeling like there is a right way to feel and a wrong way to feel. And sometimes the explanation is trying to really tell yourself that it's okay to feel what you're feeling. Even if it is talking to Milah about it, there might be an unconscious part of you that's trying to justify that you're feeling this way, but looking for her validation in order for you to realize it's okay. And I'm glad you brought up communication, because I knew there was a Mercury aspect here, and there is. Your Pluto squares your Mercury, which is the planet of communication and intellect, ideas. And so there can be power struggles when it comes to communication, where whether it's trying to dominate the conversation or manipulate the conversation can be easy to do, because Pluto is very much that energy. And then with Mercury there, it's like, again, an unconscious desire to assert dominance and power when it comes to communication. There can also be a lot of obsessive thinking with this, or even paranoia when it comes to information and communication, which can lead to some intense and confrontational disagreements. However,
Who's paranoid?
it can be, I mean, with your Pluto, it can really be either, because it can show up differently. The Pluto energy is really intense. Intuitively, what I feel is Milah's Pluto energy is really helping transform your ways of communicating. Does that mean it's going to be easy? No, because Pluto is also the planet of like death and rebirth, of deep transformation. So there may be, metaphorically speaking, parts of yourself that needed to die when it came to the way you express yourself in order to be able to express yourself authentically.
Oh, do I know? Because there's definitely been times I'm like, all right, this is work. I'm about to try a new angle.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes that's necessary. And even with your moons, like we were talking about, you're a Libra moon and you're a Capricorn moon, both of which are cardinal placements. So what that means is their energy is expressed similarly, in that they're both leaders. They both take initiative. They're pioneers. Now that's beautiful energy to have. And at the same time, if there isn't sort of a clear understanding of who's taking the lead or who is meant to sort of drive at that time, then there's a clash, because you're both used to being the driver. So it's also recognizing like, okay, this is where I need to maybe just like hop in the passenger seat and let this person drive, so that we can, again, get to where we're trying to go. Yeah. It's almost like trying to fight over the directions. So another aspect that you guys have that can be challenging is a Venus square Venus. So Venus is different for men and women. For women, Venus represents your femininity. It's your pleasures in the world. It's your desires. It's how you show up in the world. For men, it is the feminine energy that you're most drawn to, which is usually because it's representative of your inner feminine energy. So with your Venuses squaring each other, you may have just different love languages that need to be expressed and understood, so that it doesn't lead to feelings of being unloved. But also there can be significant differences when it comes to your values and your interests. And so it's going to be important to figure out what your top priorities are when it comes to your values. Like, what are the non-negotiables? Where do you overlap? Where do you differ? And when it does come to where you differ, is it a situation that can be balanced out and find harmony? Or is it a fundamental difference that might cause some hardship? Those are, again, sort of the difficult conversations that need to happen in order to really be vulnerable and honest about what it is that we want for ourselves and we care about. At the same time, you can learn a lot about yourself and your partner by appreciating those differences, because sometimes you have values that the other person doesn't even think about or may not even acknowledge that they need themselves, or may have been overlooked. And so there can be a lot of compromise and cooperation that comes of this that can really strengthen your bond. And sometimes we forget, but Venus is also a planet of finances and money. So this can also come up with financial disagreements. You know, how do you feel about money? How do you work with money? What kind of energy does money have? What's your relationship with money?
Should we pay the rent or not?
Right.
Shut up.
Is it worth it?
Shut your ass up.
But what I've also found just from observing myself and others that I find really interesting is the way you approach relationships is very similar to the way sometimes you can approach money. Mm-hmm. So if you're someone who's reckless with your emotional investment in people, you might be reckless with your money. Mm. If you're someone who's very rigid with your money, you might be rigid with your emotions as well. It's balance because everything is a spectrum. So it's not about just like, okay, everyone can have it, which then it can create a leak. But then it's also not, oh my gosh, I'm keeping it so close to myself that no one can have this. So it can be really interesting. Let me see. What sign are you guys? Venus in Gemini and Venus in Pisces.
Yeah, my Venus is in Pisces.
Yeah. So very much, it's like a dreamy state of, okay, so be careful of the rose-colored glasses. Mm-hmm. It's going to be important to ground. It can also be highly emotional because the water. So lots of things happening within that. And then allowing yourself to not want to just escape whether that escapism is in the fantasy or if it is in escaping what's right in front of you, you know, like just seeing things as they are. But it's also, again, how I explained that Venus is different for men and women. For you, it makes sense because Pisces is also a highly everything's spiritual, but highly spiritual placement. So it makes sense that you're drawn to a woman whose spirituality is a priority. I think it also helps you deepen your own spirituality, which may have not been a value of yours. I don't know. Yeah. But I think it's also helping you tap into parts of your own feminine energy because, again, what that's telling me is your feminine side is very Piscean. It's like very
emotional.
Well, emotions and mystical and otherworldly in a sense that may not have always been welcome, especially with that Capricorn moon, very sort of like authoritarian, make it make sense. If it doesn't make sense, what are we even doing? Yeah. And Pisces is like, it doesn't need to make sense. Like it is.
That is how it is. That is
so
funny.
And then with Gemini, it feels like you are someone who values intellect. You value communication and wit and having mental stimulation. Also, again, the shadow side of it is that constant need for being stimulated, you know, getting bored and wanting to just always be I don't know if aroused is the right word. It's like came
entertained.
Up. Yeah, it's like always wanting that high, you know, but also recognizing where that can sabotage. And so finding that balance too of what am I actually seeking or what am I chasing that's preventing me from experiencing what I value within that Venus placement.
Right. Then just chasing constant stimulation.
Right.
Over and over.
Which then nothing will fulfill you because it's
stimulation is only going to be stimulant for as long as it's
so much, right? Which again is something we're seeing collectively with how much stimulation we get on a day-to-day basis of the dopamine hits that we need. We're not really getting because we're already like it's got to be more and more intense. So it's remembering how to bring it back down.
Yeah.
How are you guys feeling about that?
I think that our values, I mean, you know what I realize? There's so little blueprints for relationships, you know? I think like we're in a time in the world like not a lot of people are necessarily prioritizing relationships. Obviously, like the open relationships are at an all-time high. The poly, which is just like hoes, you know? Poly people, I hate to tell you, you're just hoes. But I keep doing this. But I think because of that, there hasn't been a lot of times we've sat down and like, what are your values, Orlando? My values are family, finances, and spirituality. You know what I mean? It's like we are less conditioned to, or really less just educated to like have those kind of conversations because we've already been taught, like, especially as women, like, don't come on too strong, don't be too serious, don't scare them away, don't talk about that you want a relationship on the first 14 dates,
right? Or ever,
you know, marriage, what's that,
right?
And so we're not really like, it's not like, I want to say like the olden days where it's like, I would like to be a wife, Jackie, you know.
Yeah.
So there's just, we literally have less examples of what that looks like. I was literally watching a Instagram's whatever, what the fuck, you know, video, and there was a teacher, and he was literally like teaching the students, they're probably like in high school or maybe like 8th grade, like simulating a date. And like asking, like, how are you? Like, you know, like literally like just having them observe and interact. And the little boy was just like, you know, I never like had nobody do that. I never talked to a girl like that. And I was just like, damn, there's this expectation of humans to know how to like do certain things and establish long-term relationships. But we're not really teaching them at all, or, you know, and so then we come up and we're like, there's bitches like us and we're single, like, what the fuck is wrong with these men? They don't know shit. They don't even know how to have a fucking conversation. Like, we're in LA smiling at people and they won't even come over and ask for your fucking number, and you're like, what the fuck? So it's just, it kind of reinforces and reminds me, like, me and Orlando started as friends, I mean, ish, you know, but like, it just flowed, and that I mean, now at this point, yes, we're just in alignment, but there was never a time we sat down and was like, what are your values, you know? So I think naturally they're in alignment. I've heard him say like a couple of times, which is not something I've ever thought about just because I don't know why, but he was like, I just really want to be on a porch and watch my grandkids play in the yard. I was like, I've never had that thought ever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not that I don't, you know, aspire to have that, because obviously I'm a mom and, you know, the legacy, but it's just never been something I visualized or thought about, you know? So it's an interesting, even for him, he expressed as a little boy, like seeing like movies like fucking Pretty Woman and being like, I want to be married in the 4th grade. And like, granted, I wanted to be married, but I was just like, I want to be a housewife and I want to be cute and do very little and have a nanny, and like those are my visions, you know. And so it's interesting to hear you say that, because I feel like a lot of people lack the insight to have those conversations early on, and then you're deep in, and then you're getting a reading by Bruna and you're like, oh fuck, we don't even have, you know.
Yeah, well, it's all the intention, right? And it's hard to have a conversation about your values when you don't even know your own, and that takes the awareness of, oh shit, what do I value? Like, what are my top 5 values? And if these are my top 5 values, am I practicing them? Am I embodying them? Am I valuing my values? And so again, I 1000% agree. And it makes me think of the quote between what is meant and not said, and what is said and not meant, so much love is lost. So assumption and misinterpretation are huge challenges when it comes to coming together. And I think naturally we tend to assume that other people either just know certain things or understand certain things. And it's really about peeling it back and going back to basics. And as stupid as it may seem, it's like the bare minimum of, what does respect look like to you?
Yeah.
You know, like that type of stuff where you can get in a confrontation with someone because you're like, that was disrespectful. And they're like, what do you mean? You know, and it's like recognizing I am sitting across someone who has a completely different lens of life than I do. They grew up differently. They had different parents. They had different experiences. They see life differently than me. So
living on a whole different earth.
Right. So unless we take the time and are intentional about, you know, how were you loved? How do you know love? Like, what does love mean to you? How do you feel loved? You know, all these different questions that I think we bypass a lot because we sort of try to just jump in and tread water and see.
And a lot of times we've bypassed it in ourselves.
Exactly.
Which is like the number one thing is like I haven't even acknowledged these wounds or this like these deep things in myself. So how can I acknowledge them for someone else?
Exactly.
You know, and like I recognize that, you know, when we really started getting in and he like moved in and shit, I was like, oh my God, like what have we fucking signed up for? Like I gotta deal with my shit. I gotta recognize my own wounds, my own family shit, my own childhood shit, which I've been trying to avoid my whole life. And then here you come in with your own shit and your own wounds and your family shit. And your abandonment issues. I'm like, oh God, like
and I need to be held when I'm crying.
These are two like it dawned on me. And one time we were in Mexico before we moved in together. We took like a 30-day sabbatical in Mexico, and we did mushrooms. And like we're like sitting in front of each other like Indian style or what am I trying to say? Yap yum. Thank you. Wow, my little tantric man. And I looked at him. I was like, "Oh my God, he's just a human." Right. I was like, "Oh my God, he's just a human. He's just like a regular human person with feelings and shit
and nuance and complexities
and yeah, and all these like experiences and wounds." And it dawned on me for the first time, like I love a person. I don't love an idea of what I don't love the idea of the perfect person being next to me. I just like it peeled back all these layers to like, oh my God, you're a fucking human. And then there's sometimes even in our conflict, I see him revert into like little boy Orlando, and I can like feel him go into that space. And it's so interesting. Like we were on a trip with a friend, and he was like in a shitty
big
mood.
Boy.
Yeah, he was
man.
See, we're on like a international week-long trip with a new friend, and she's like the third person. It's just me and him and her, which is also like, let's not argue in front of the fucking third person. It makes shit really uncomfortable. But he was pouting about something, and like she's also super spiritual, and I was just like, he reverts, and she's like, oh, I see it. You know what I mean? And it's like having the awareness, and even me too. Like there was a point in that trip in Mexico early on our relationship, because we lived on separate coasts. We hadn't had any conflicts. We barely had any arguments, because it's just like, I'll hang up. Right. Fuck you. Bye.
You had the distance as
I'm
a
just
buffer.
like, and I'm gonna be mad and keep going and do some whatever. But in proximity, it's different, and there was a time we got in like an argument, and I was like, oh fuck, we're gonna argue. And it's like, yeah, it's inevitable, but also like he yelled at me, and he like never yelled at me before, and I was just like, I just like froze.
And then you reverted.
And it literally, and I felt myself revert, and it's just like a lot of times if you're navigating the world as a single person, you have you sometimes have less situations that are going to make you look at yourself that way or like recognize it, because there have been times in my adulthood, mostly in like the last year, and I'm like, oh my God, that was like little girl me.
Yeah.
And I can look back and then I can pinpoint it, to certain times where I felt other ways, but without that trigger or without that, like, even like the safety of being able to be in conflict and then observe myself. Because I recognize, for instance, for children, teenagers, whatever, in your parent situation, it is like, for me, it's like a defense mechanism. And a lot of times you can't talk back. You can't respond. You're told not to cry. You're told, what the fuck are you crying for? You know what I mean? And you're dismissed. And so you kind of, as an adult, you format behaviors that kind of abandon all of those. You put up walls to not see those parts of you. And a lot of times, like I realized this recently, I have like very vague memories of my childhood. And it's not like it wasn't, great. It's just that when you suppress certain things, you suppress it all. Because your subconscious can't really pinpoint what it's going to, like if you just cover up a whole thing, it's going to cover up the whole thing.
Or you were just dissociating.
Yeah.
And living in your head. So the body memory is there, but the conscious connection to that memory
to the why
is not. Right. And even what you were mentioning, it's not just suppressing it. It sounds like also trying to prevent feeling that again in any type of way, which in that certain situation might be just shutting down completely because I don't even want the possibility of feeling what I felt then again, which might be triggering for you when you're with someone who wants that sort of attention, because then it's, I had to do it by myself. Why can't you do the same? You know, it's that. And it's also being now with close proximity witnessed in those moments. Because I know that really well. The self-isolating, it's like, oop, let me go back in my cave and I'll come out when I'm ready. But like having someone witness you in those moments that are so easily hidden when you are single, which again, it's not about codependency where you're just jumping from one relationship to another, or hyper independence. It's the balance of that healthy interdependence. But it's easier sometimes to be single because there is no one sort of mirroring or reflecting anything at you. So sometimes when you are in that space, you can kind of be like, no, like I don't need a relationship. And it's like, girl, you're hiding. Like I had to face that within myself of, you feel safer alone.
Because no one's there to trigger you.
Right.
No one's watching you.
Because
no one's
you don't have to show up. Like it's, you got
like,
used to
me.
Right. Like I know how to deal with myself. Learn that. So now I don't have to do the work of one, allowing myself to be perceived, which can be really scary, by someone else, because that opens you up to rejection, to criticism, to judgment, whatever it is. Yeah. And I don't have to do the work of trying to get you, you know, it's like I'm in my own bubble, my own world.
I already got me, barely, almost, and so seems like a huge undertaking.
Right. And yet
almost
very, I mean, we've talked about this because we've had conversations about your astrological signature together, and it's very fated. It is very spiritual and a heightened calling that's bigger than just the relationship. You know, for both of you, there's a sense of not just healing things within yourself through each other, but generational. Like this is, and I very strongly believe in this. You know, I believe in epigenetics. I believe in energy. I believe that something you heal today is healing something from hundreds of years ago. Like I believe in that. So the work that we do with people, which aside from you guys in general, sometimes we do assume someone is supposed to take a role in our lives when really they were just sent in to help us heal something that's bigger than the two of you. But when it is sort of a partnership in that way, you get to really understand, again, when you take the ego out of it, that you love me so much, your soul loves me so much that you signed up to fight this war with me. Because the war is what's happening inside of me. And usually, maybe for some of us, used to fighting alone. And it's exhausting, but it's what we know. And then all of a sudden, God's like, here's a helper, but you know, the help is going to show up in maybe unconventional ways. Right. So it's constantly reframing things of, I'm not fighting you. I'm fighting the energy of this thing that you're reminding me of. But you're reminding me of it so that I can't just tuck it away and let it continue to control my life. So thank you. And now, depending on what it is, what do I need? Because I have the assistance, I have the help. I know this person loves me. And if I'm just willing to accept that this is difficult for me, or this is a challenge for me, or when you do this, I feel this way and it's uncomfortable. And then you can sort of get back to, oh, I'm dealing with little Orlando, or I'm dealing with little Milah. And if this was a child sitting in front of me, how would I talk to them? How would I nurture them?
For a fact, because that's something that I realize when it comes to like recognizing, like when we're arguing or having a disagreement, and I have to like show up for her, or she tries to show up for me. It's like, okay, is she being a bitch? Okay, no, she's not a bitch. So I gotta let that go. Well, is she being immature? Well, she's not immature, so I gotta let that go. So it's like trying to like put all these things to the side and figure out like, well, why is she reacting like this? Oh, this is little girl Milah that went through something, and now it's like coming out. And even we did a reading before with Sylvia. And even she told us before, like, a lot of the things that we do, even through our sexual energy or even through intercourse, is like very healing for our past selves and like past generational traumas. And then to go further, you're going to hear it in next week's episode with Danny, where he was telling us that our love together is supposed to help heal generational wounds, but like how did he say, like, in the sense of like we're supposed to be an example of like when we come together and we're so powerful overcoming these things, and then through our example people can see that and feel that energy and feel that vibrance because we're willing to show up for each other. And I'm even thinking about and realizing when it comes to like values and stuff like that, when they tell us like, you know, do things that require like high value, like take care of a family, you know, like give me, coming from our parents and stuff like that, when they say like, you know, give me some grandkids, it's like, you haven't even showed me how to rub a pregnant belly, right? Like that,
right.
Like these are like the
flying
tiny
blind
here. And these are the tiny little details that go into happy relationships, that go into like successful families, like knowing how to touch a woman like non-sexually but intimately, like these little details that made it hard for me to come up with values because I didn't know the details of what that value is.
Right. And you can learn.
Right.
Because that's what I got also when you were talking about never having examples of these things. And in my mind, I heard, oh, you're meant to be the example. Like when you can notice there's a void in something that you are experiencing, that is an opportunity for you to, it's harder, but that's an opportunity for you to be the thing in the world that you are not seeing.
It's to show that it's not impossible.
Right. And not only are you showing up and doing that for each other, but you're willing to do it openly for other people. So other people are able to witness this conversation and resonate with it. And now you've planted the seed for them to take it in their own life. With the sexual healing too, again, it's mind, body, spirit. So the sexual healing is healing cellular memory. Like there is body trauma that you may be healing through each other that may not be conscious. And so again, it's the different levels of healing that you're experiencing with each other because that brought you together. And if you weren't given the tools, which unfortunately a lot of us are kind of like,
here.
Right. We're just like,
winging it.
we avoid doing certain things that we may actually want because we're so afraid of being inadequate and not knowing how to do it. Instead of just recognizing, I don't know how to do this. But we also have a lot of resources, and it's recognizing that you may have taught me more about what I don't want to do or what I don't want to see. But there are people who can help me when it comes to what I do want to see and learn, and finding those mentors or those friendships or those people who embody the traits and energy that you want to experience in yourself and in your life, and letting them teach you in that way as well. And also just creating something new than what you've always experienced.
Right. No, go ahead. I love listening to you talk.
I was just going to say, and also I think not letting things be like so definitive, you know, like I realized I was having a thought the other day and I'm like, oh God, like I'm not that nurturing. Like I feel like there's parts of me that are not that nurturing, and it made a conversation come up when my dad was like, your mom was never nurturing to me. She was never affectionate. And you know what? He said it like years ago, you know, and it like kind of like stuck out to me, and I kind of buried it away, you know? And then recently I was like, I don't know if I was just like up late thinking, and I was like, oh my God, is this where I lack? And it's not something I've ever really said out loud because I think I felt bad saying I'm not nurturing, you know what I mean, in ways, because I feel like I am, but I know where I there's parts of me where it's difficult for me to be soft. Like I literally feel it in my body, like
because you weren't modeled it.
Yeah, and so I'm just like, stop.
And it's not that you're not nurturing. It's an attribute of yours you haven't been able to practice. He's helping you practice. Because your sun is conjunct or right on top, like literally right on top. Your sun's at 1 degree Cancer.
Is it 1 degree Cancer because I'm the first day? I'll be trying to like interpret it from this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And it's also, the earlier degrees means it's very fresh energy. So it's not something that you've necessarily mastered in other lives. So Cancer energy is new for you, and which is the mother. And it's literally right on top of your Chiron, which is the greatest wound, in Cancer. And when you have Chiron in Cancer, that can point to you feeling emotionally homeless for most of your life. And
emotionally homeless, Jesus.
Right. So not a big deal or anything, but not to get too deep, but it makes sense that being soft and nurturing and maternal may be so
far-fetched.
not even foreign is the word I was looking for. Thank you. Yeah, very foreign for you. One, it's very new. You got 0 degrees and 1 degree. Fresh ass energy. Right. It's new out the box.
New mommy.
And then at the same time, knowing that that's a wound, like there is not only did you have to learn how to nurture yourself, but until you learn how to do that, of course, it's going to be difficult to give it to other people because unconsciously there is also resentment there.
I literally, every time I'm so annoyed and he'll be like trying to be affectionate and I'm like,
tap.
Like a cat.
Yeah, like, yes, like very basic affection.
I'm being nice, but
foundational affection.
It feels feels uncomfortable because it is. I'm trying. This is me trying. And I'm like,
what's the fear?
I don't know. It just feels like, I think I'm used to like buttoning it up. And I just don't. It just doesn't come. And in a way where it's like I've seen my friends mother their children in a certain way, and I've felt it make me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And that was when I really had to start acknowledging that there is some kind of thing with this. Like when I would see some of my friends, like in my mind, what I thought was like babying their children, it would bother the fuck out of me. It would make me really uncomfortable. And I was like, what the fuck is wrong with you? This is a fucking child. And it dawned on me, it's like, oh, I'm feeling weird because it's not something that I'm familiar with and that it doesn't feel comfortable to me. And maybe because it's something that I did not get. And so it's made me have to be like really more intentional about how I mother Luna. And I'm nurturing to my daughter, but there are times where I'm like, oh shit, that's kind of like a hard nurture.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, come here and give me a kiss.
It's so funny because it's like watching you like break the mold. Like when I'm trying to be happy with her and like, oh, we're over this. And it's like, I can see it in her face. Like, I'm trying to leave you. And I'm figuring out how to try to leave you in my head while
it's
I'm
like the tuck
you.
and roll when you're cuddling.
Like, I got to kiss you back because I can't leave. But trust me, in my head, I'm trying to figure it out.
Yeah, it can be. And again, so many experiences can lend to this, but it can be uncomfortable in the body, like your somatic responses to touch, unless it's in a certain environment that you feel you have control over. And then it can also be what you were mentioning about seeing kids being nurtured and it creating an emotional response. Those emotional responses are signs of the shadow coming out. And so when that happens, it is helpful to pause and be like, why do I feel so strongly about this? And more often than not, it is that sense of sometimes anger, which is masking maybe sadness over the fact that you're being shown and reminded what you did not receive. And so for you, it can come across as almost like an ick because because sometimes the things that we find either repulsive or unattractive or anything is really the shadow trying to perpetuate this thing that we don't like, that we don't need it. Because if you were to accept the fact that, oh, this actually makes me sad because I do want that and need it, then you have to actually do the work of processing all of that. And the shadow doesn't like, it's like, we're good. Like we don't have to do that because it likes repetition. The ego loves repetition.
It's comfortable.
Yeah.
This is how you've survived. This is how you've defended. This is how it'll go on.
Right. And it's constantly trying to remind your mind, body, and spirit that we are not living in that time and space anymore. And the only thing that's keeping the past alive is me, by continuing this energetic cycle of showing up in this way or responding to things in this way. Right. Deep breaths all around. Deep breaths all around. A couple things I also want to mention. I don't know how we are on time because I could talk literally for the rest of the day.
That's what happens when you own the studio. Good thing that we are at Good Media. Oh, yeah. Shout out to Good Media. This is where we record. This is where Good Moms record. This is where a couple great podcast recorder for better or best is also in here. So if you need a podcast studio that you can come in and record a podcast, but also do many other things, like we have what we have over there, the photo area, baby. You can also do creative content here. You can use the whole studio. This is my plug-in for the
Thank you.
Right.
For the
Hashtag ad, hashtag spons.
Good media.
Good media.
I love it.
Goodproductions.com.
That was beautiful.
Is that going to be our drop?
Just wink in the camera.
Yes. So something else I wanted to bring up, you've heard me talk about activating houses a lot, and you two do that for each other in very significant houses of your chart. And what I found interesting is you each highly activate, meaning you have like a cluster of planets in each other's houses. So really condensed and heightened energy in the two houses that are opposing each other. So there's a strong sense of balance. So Orlando, you have placements that are activating Milah's 12th house and her 6th house, which are opposite houses. And in that access, it is a lot about your habits, your daily work, the way you show up on a day-to-day basis, your service to others and yourself, while also your unconscious, like what's hidden from you, what's going on underneath the surface that may not be easily accessible to you. So he's actually really helping you uncover a lot of what's way back there that's easier to ignore because it's so far down that you could just pretend like it's not there. But he's like, here it is.
My favorite mechanism.
Right, which is obviously helping you and then the relationship. And then you are activating Orlando's 2nd house and 8th house, which are also opposing houses. And funny enough, these are houses of values to some respect. The 2nd house is material possessions. It's also a financial house, same as the 8th house, which is more shared resources. But what's coming through for me more than anything is self-worth and values. So again, we talked about mother wounds a little bit. You both are activating a lot of aspects of a mother wound within each other. For you, it is that nurturing. It is the softness. It is putting down the walls in the garden and knowing you're safe and accepting that form of love and care and knowing you're worthy of that love and care and being treated in that way. And for you, it is also about your worthiness when it comes to how you show up in your work, how you show up in intimacy. So 8th house is also intimacy and sex, as well as taboo and spirituality. So there's a lot of pointing the light at where there might be blocks or limiting beliefs when it comes to what you're worthy of, which can be translated to finances or just your own vulnerabilities, your willingness to allow people to get close to you to create that intimacy, or what forms of intimacy may feel unsafe to you because it is more of an emotional bond versus perhaps a physical one. And so different things can come up with that. But I found that very interesting because it's almost like you guys are creating an X, like X marks the spot with these activations of also very karmic houses, which is why it makes sense that you two coming together is not just about you guys. You know, it's about the greater good. It's about really healing some deeply ingrained and rooted karmic patterns that may have been going on for generations, you know, right? Until y'all wrote in your soul contract, like, hey, so we're going to meet up in Mexico. And
2020.
It's going to be a wild ride and it's going to be challenging, but we're going to freaking do this because we're going to help each other work through and heal these patterns to release them. So it doesn't have to keep going on. Yeah.
And even with you saying that we are doing this and we could show it like everybody else. I mean, it goes into like the title of the Love Cast, which is like Love Like This. It's like, don't do it exactly, but this is how we do it. And you can have something similar to this if you follow these patterns, if you get your reading, if you go on certain dates, if you listen to how to talk to each other and like how to communicate, like you can have a love that's similar in the sense that it's grand and it's big and it's beautiful and it's very obvious. And even going back to the value conversation, I didn't have the details of like how to have like my values like come to fruition. Like say for instance, like say start a family. and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, but there's money that comes into like starting a family. Like I also have to get life insurance just in case of my passing. I have to make sure like my retirement is like in order. And I would see these things within families where they would go like, oh yeah, fall in love, start a family, take care of that baby, be committed and faithful. It's like, but have you taught somebody what commitment and faithfulness looks like? Have you taught somebody about financial ideals that like go into
Right.
like taking care of like these kids, like how much
The
Pampers
logistics
cost,
of it
like
all.
eggs
The
are
business.
$5 a like carton, like these are just all like the little details. So without knowing all these details, it of how to like live life with somebody, it's become customed, right? I just realized that I had to customize it. So going into a relationship with Milah and all of these things coming up, I didn't know necessarily all the values except for I want to have a grandkid. And if I have a grandkid, that means I raised a good kid and they had a grandkid. So, right? So like other than that, I didn't know necessarily what I wanted, but because I was open to us having a customized type of relationship with our own values, even though it wasn't taught to us, I think that's what's been a strong foundational piece. Because even the 30 days in Mexico, never done that before, but I just up and went, yeah, we're gonna well we want to do 30 days away somewhere. We're like, yo, let's use this 30 days as a foundational piece for our relationship. Never done that before, and just realizing that as we've been going along with our relationship, it's just all been customizable. I've never seen it before. Me and Milah both don't necessarily have like the examples and the details in those examples of how to do things. So we've just really been winging it in a sense,
Yeah.
but just been open to forming and whatever it looks like, so it just makes sense for us. And we want everybody to feel like your relationship should be custom to what fits for you, not under a specific religious structure or a social structure, but whatever you can add or take away to make it beautiful, like please do that.
Yeah, and it sounds like you guys really surrendered to whatever felt aligned for you guys coming together. I don't
Right.
think you're winging it because it's very faded.
Yeah.
It may feel like you're
It's
winging it.
divine kind of, yeah.
Right. It is divine. And the divine shows up in that way by you showing up differently than you have before. It's kind of like when you're around someone and all of a sudden, like when you would normally pop off, you have that moment of patience and you're like, well, where the hell did you come from? Like, were you always there? And again, it's an energetic chemical exchange, and certain people bring out certain parts of us. And so you guys coming together these are the gifts, right, that can come. We've talked a lot about like the challenges and things that can happen, but obviously there's a lot of gifts as well, which is helping you carry out the more challenging aspects. Because if it was all just challenges, it probably wouldn't work. It would be too much. There's a balance there. And so it's beautiful that you're able to recognize that and also lean into it, even if it is a little uncomfortable, which is telling you there's something deeper. There is a knowing of some kind that may not make logical sense, but your spirit's like, you're in the right place with the right person. Just continue to trust in how this is unfolding because it's giving you something.
Right. And I can say that's the one thing that's always been different with, like, I guess going on this journey of love, relationship, and compatibility and all these things was the intention. It's like, I don't know necessarily what I'm doing. I haven't been shown the proper examples, but I want this to work. I want to figure it out. I want to keep on going. And just that driving force of intention of wanting to do it
Yes.
made it come to this point of like where we can customize it, where we can see like, oh shit, this is my person. And it's like
Yeah.
all coming together well.
Yeah, I love that. So I did want to touch on your composite chart really quickly because I know I mentioned it earlier. And so again, this is the chart that was created based on the entity of your relationship. So if you're curious, your relationship would be an Aries sun, Scorpio moon, and Libra rising.
Aries, Sun, Scorpio. Wow. Okay.
Right. Pretty
A lot of
powerful.
Aries.
Lots.
I was going to say you love that.
Lots of energy there. And again, the nurturing aspect comes up here because the Chiron is in Cancer. And so that is a huge part of your healing within the relationship. Like it is very much a fundamental aspect of the relationship coming together, as well as healing these mother wounds, because a Scorpio moon, which is also
the Scorpio moon is what I was looking forward to. Like,
yeah, the Scorpio moon, which is also conjunct your Pluto in Scorpio, is very much digging into those maternal wounds, which is also affecting the Chiron in Cancer. So a lot of that nurturing aspect, which again, the mothers are our teachers when it comes to receiving. Yeah. So it is a lot of unlearning so that you can receive. It's a lot of unlearning about, well, what do I believe I'm worthy of receiving? Or what does it mean if I do receive? What does that mean about, am I now indebted to someone? Especially if you've been shown conditional love. It can be really difficult to receive, because in the back of your mind, you're like, well, what are they expecting now? Because there's always a transaction. Yeah. So it's both highlighting that and also, again, highly spiritual and deep. And so this is not like your sort of Disney fairy tale type of thing. This is like, oh no, we're getting to the root of it, because Saturn in your composite chart is also in the 4th house of home. So Saturn to me in a composite chart represents the commitment of the relationship, because Saturn is very committed. It is disciplined. It is focused. It is mature. And so with it in the 4th house of home and family and ancestry and roots, your relationship is centered on creating a stable foundation.
Yep. Which is the 30 days in Mexico.
Yes. So it's continuing that, because again, it is, Capricorn is the authority. And so it's really creating that energy. And then your 7th house of marriage and one-on-one partnerships is lit up with placements. You got your Venus in there, which is beautiful to see, your Mars, your Sun, your vertex, which is a fated point, and your Mercury. So lots of energy in that 7th house, in that one-on-one commitment. And then you have your Black Moon Lilith, which is the feminine shadow in astrology, in your 1st house of Libra as well. So very intense connection that can sometimes be visibly, like, it's just apparent sometimes, that intensity. But again, that intensity can be transmuted to something that is helpful for the relationship or not so helpful. It's up to you guys in order to recognize it when it's happening and be like, okay, how can we use this to our benefit? Because again, energy is energy. It's not good or bad. It just is. So even like an example I love to use is if you're getting a lot of, let's just say, hate on the internet. Yeah. That's a lot of energy being thrown at you. You could try to send it back, but now we're ping-ponging because there's energy just being thrown back and forth. Or you can be like, y'all are giving me free energy. I'm going to transmute that bitch to help me. Let me use it. Yeah. So again, it's being the alchemist in that way and seeing where there's a lot of energy in the relationship and how can we manipulate it like the magician, swirl it up into something that gives us something that we can work with.
Using their ammo.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. This is funny because I'm thinking about like how our separate charts come together and like create this one, and like how like the grandness of like both of our charts can create like this new grand birth chart. Yeah. I'm just stuck on like the big three of thinking about like how our relationship is, because I feel like from the Libra rising, which like is like how you can be seen or show up to other people. And I'm thinking about how we look like balanced, like a Libra scale, and like we're very chill. I feel like Libras are very like out of all the 3 air signs, they're the more like chiller ones, more balanced. And then like the Aries sun, like when you get closer and you really see what it is, it's like, oh, they're like a ray of light. Look at that ray of light. Let me get closer. And as soon as you get like right in front of our face, this big blaze like a forest fire, like, oh, this is a strong, big, burning, like Aries fire. And then I'm thinking about like the Scorpio moon, where it's like how we come across like emotionally, and how like
also
it's
dark,
sensual
deep,
and
mysterious.
emotional.
Yeah,
intimate. Like that's pretty much like
Isn't
good
that
representation
crazy?
of like how our relationship shows up to other people.
Yeah.
Based on like what other people have told us. So,
it definitely feels that way even from our conversation. And as a reminder, with your rising in Libra and your 7th house in Aries, along with that stellium of all that energy, a common theme within the partnership is going to be that balance between partnership and independence, because that is the Aries Libra axis. So it's where am I being selfish and maybe not considering the other person? And where am I considering the other person too much that I'm losing myself? What is the balance between the two? So that's going to be a huge part of the relationship when it comes to honoring your autonomy and recognizing your individuality, while also recognizing that there is magic and growth that can happen when we can find middle ground to come together in a really healthy way.
I mean, that's true. I think we both are extremely independent, or like just individuals, you know, and it's like sometimes that could, I mean, I think it has been fine, but overall, I think it's important that we are constantly maintaining who we are individually, because we are like a little bit psycho and obsessed.
Yeah, definitely obsessed. And I do have to pay attention to it, because that like Scorpio rising for me, that can like really come off as like big and boisterous, intense, and like sexy. It's like I like the fact that me and Milah, we showed up as like 100% of ourselves, and then there are times where I'll show up at like 150, 170, 200%. So it's like, yeah,
the scales, balancing it out.
It's interesting. When we first met, I had like when you talk about the soul contract and the agreement that we made in other lifetimes, I think about like when I met him, there was a conscious decision in my mind. I had like got out of a relationship that was like literally not for me at all. Like it was not. I look at pictures and I'm like, bitch, you were really tripping. But he was really nice, and like a really nice guy. He wanted like serious relationship. He was older. He had a good job, you know, and I cheated on him. And after that, I felt really bad. And I was like, what's wrong with me? Like, I'm a bitch. And I just wasn't being honest with myself. But literally like weeks after that, after that, I was just like, I'm never doing that again. I'm never going into any space where I'm like a portion of myself. I'm never going to, even if it's too much, I'm never going to be even remotely dishonest or like sugarcoat, you know, in order to maintain a relationship of some sort, what I thought was like traditional, or like, you know, how it was supposed to be. And then I met him like maybe a couple weeks after that. And it was like almost when I made the agreement with myself, then God was like, and here's where the intersection happened.
Yeah.
Blessings.
Yeah,
Blessings.
And it didn't look like something that I wanted. I was not interested in Orlando romantically. I thought he was very strange and like weird, you know. And I was just like, what a weird character, you know. Like, we're gonna be friends. And you know, like 5 days later, I was like, what the fuck just happened? And even right after that, we went on a trip to Mexico, like 4 weeks after we met. And he met me at a time I had literally just had this crazy LSD spiritual like experience with these people. And like when he came, I was like super open. I felt super clear. It was like a time where I got my powers. And I was just like, even though I had gone through a lot of crazy shit, at that moment I was like, everything's going to be okay. And I just knew it. And literally went after that, like that trip, a lot of magical shit happened like after, like boom, 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 boom. And I was like, am I living in a dream? Like, what the fuck is happening? But
we might be.
Yeah. You know,
who knows?
One of these dimensions is dreamy as hell. Yeah.
Right.
But it ignited something, and it always resonates with me, because I just do feel like it was a re-meeting of souls, you know. And it was a very intricate time, consciously and subconsciously, where I made a shift in like how I was going to show up, and as soon as I made that agreement with myself, you know, in rolls crazy over here with this fucking crop top on. And, you know, and it's been kind of like an interesting whirlwind. And a lot of it has been a lot of challenges with myself, and also feeling safe to do it, and safe to like just like show up in this way. And I, you know, as we're having this conversation and we're talking about conflict, and all relationships have conflict, and that there's soul lessons, and you know, like I think sometimes people get in fucked up relationships with like the completely wrong people, and they are like, well, I need to work through it because nothing's easy. You know, we've all had that girlfriend who's like, it's not going to be easy. And one of the things is like, you know, when it's not something like there's certain conflicts that are just we're people trying to coexist and learn each other, but there's love and there's safety here, and we're on the same page. And there's people where it's like, that it's just not compatible. You do not see the same way, and you're convincing and you're pushing and you're pulling. And so I just I really want to speak to that and say, like, if you're listening and you think that your 20-year relationship of conflict is just going to come to this head of understanding, that's probably not the case.
Right.
But I think a lot of the conflict, not even conflict, but the push and pull that we feel is that the release of the ego, the release of the defense mechanisms that we've had, have been instilled with us since we were children, and like just feeling safe in the safety and the commitment and that like we're doing this together has been, not the challenge, but the obstacle of seeing myself as I actually am and being loved regardless has been a lot of the challenge versus like we're just not compatible.
Right.
So I think people sometimes are lack awareness, or honestly it's just like not even awareness, it's just like sometimes you want something so bad that you're willing to like ignore the major red flags, and you just have to be honest with yourself overall. Right. When going into a relationship, and like don't change the fucking algorithm to make it what you want. And I think a lot of time as women, right, we tend to do that. We have this idea, we're supposed to have kids by a certain age, we're supposed to have this, supposed to look like this is what it's going to be, and he fits perfectly on paper, so it's going to work.
Right.
And it's like, bitch, no,
that's not real life. And also the feminine shadow is manipulation. So whether that's manipulating another person, manipulating yourself, manipulating a situation to fit the narrative that you want it to be, at some point, if it's not aligned, it's just going to get louder and louder until you listen. But what I love about your relationship and your willingness to be open and candid with other people is, I think, especially with the healing journey and people who do value spirituality and alignment and connection, there can be a self-sabotaging behavior of thinking like, oh, I have to be healed before I can get into a relationship. And what I hope that people recognize is you can do all the healing work in the world. Relational wounds are not going to be healed outside of a relationship. And when you meet someone, it's always on time. Like, I don't believe in wrong person, wrong time. The universe is highly intelligent. You think they're like, dang, they showed up 5 minutes too early.
Fuck, I fucked that up. Maybe
right, let's reboot.
I should never took my lunch. I knew
I should have took my lunch. I'm definitely getting in trouble this time.
Yeah. It happened when it's meant to happen. Right. It's just that you don't understand why. And maybe you don't need to. It's trusting that this person is significant. I'm trusting that I'm feeling this. And whether or not you're willing to jump in, buckle up, and see what the ride is all about. But acknowledging that this idea of perfectionism, or I have to have A, B, C, and D done or achieved or whatever else before I can be loved or love another or build a relationship, can sometimes be an unconscious wound of not feeling good enough and being afraid of what that relationship could bring out in you. Because the truth is, there will always be more healing. You will always find something that triggers you. There will always be a moment where you go back and you're like, oh shit, thought we worked through this, and now here it is again. So it's not about trying to get all of that out of the way, which is sometimes also an unconscious desire to not allow anyone else to see you messy. I don't want anyone to know that this bothers me, or that I hyperventilate, cry, or that, I shut down and dissociate for days, all these different things that you keep hidden. But that's what's actually going to heal you. So it's that paradox of thinking, oh no, I have to reach this certain thing or status or whatever in order to be loved, when it's really like that love might actually be the thing that helps you heal.
Transmute whatever you're sitting with in your
right. And again, just being very mindful of it, because it's not for everybody. Like,
there's a balance.
Situational.
There's some work you got to do the fuck by yourself,
right?
Like, you have to be in a certain place to acknowledge some shit first and foremost, and be willing to be like, okay, look, I'm not perfect. Can you believe it?
Right.
And then and not putting that responsibility solely on someone else, but also taking the responsibility, because everything that comes up mostly, yes, it's triggered by someone else, but it's mostly you with you.
Right. It literally is, because if we are all reflections of each other, then your unique expression and your unique expression is showing me something about myself that how would I see otherwise? I don't get to see myself, which is one of the craziest things about this experience is I've lived as myself my entire life, and I will never know myself the way other people know me.
Because how I perceive myself and how you perceive me. And you're going to see a different version of yourself in every single relationship.
Yes.
The Bruna you see with this person is not the Bruna you're going to be with this other person.
Oh, don't I know it?
And it's going to bring up a different version of you. And it's sometimes, have you ever been in a relationship with someone who's complete, like a totally different version comes out of you because you're like, this is not good.
You be
Right.
bringing
Or
something
this
out of
is
me,
really
yeah.
good. Like I've been in situations where I'm like, who is she?
Right.
Wow.
I like her.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I thought I could do this. I didn't know for sure. And then I'm like, oh, it's literally chemistry. And I know again we use all these words all the time, but we forget what they actually mean.
Energetic chemistry.
Right. There is a chemical thing happening, and certain people bring out sides of me that maybe other people will never see. But there's
Activate.
something right. And same vice versa. And so even that is something to consider when you think about who you want around you. Who am I around this person? Yes, of course, take accountability and responsibility for who you show up as. But there's also moments where you can recognize this person, for whatever reason, brings out a side of me that I either need to work through or takes me back to someone that I don't care to embody anymore, that I understand may still live within me, but they're no longer driving. And around these people or person, this person jumps in the driver's seat. So that may not be the healthiest energy to be around. So it takes a lot of accountability and responsibility in many different aspects.
Yeah.
But it's also fascinating as an observer to just be like, dang, we really out here just like doing it.
Right. And even my triggers, sometimes what they show me is like where I am on the journey of my trauma. It's like, okay, if you're able to like trigger me and it's like, it doesn't really mean anything. It's like, oh, I'm close to the end of like getting this like out of my system and like how I feel about it. And even realizing how the healing always continues, because in the relationship, I'm not only healing childhood traumas, but I have adult traumas that I have to heal also. Like just being at this age right now and thinking about back to like, oh, I could have set myself up like better financially at this point, and like not thinking about adult traumas like responsibilities or where I am in life now, or what I could have done, and like those thoughts and things like that, and overcoming and healing those thoughts that I may be holding on to myself or feeling like I'm lacking in. And so like the constant,
Or getting stuck in a state of judgment.
Especially getting stuck in a state of judgment, especially with like being a man and ego and like always constantly like worrying about respect and embarrassment and stuff like that. So yeah, it's also all so beautiful to see how our charts separately and then how our chart looks together, and I can't wait to like really dive into more about like our chart together, because a lot of times when I hear these the astrology readings from you or Danny or from another reader named Sylvia in Costa Rica, and I would think okay, well, this is my chart, this is her chart, and like how can it come together? But now seeing that we have a chart that what it looks like when we're together, I feel like reading that one could give me more of a sense of like how to navigate in the relationship than how to navigate as myself to make Milah happy.
Right.
Yeah. So I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, no, I'm going to leave all
more.
of this with you because it's a lot, but it's for you.
I'm gonna make a binder and put it in my love bookshelf. Like, let me see with page 17.
Yes.
And it even makes me think to other people because if you sit here and think of like just yourself as an individual, and you can possibly read a chart about how you and your partner look when it's like molded or the relationship is meshed together, then you can approach it differently, because saying that the sun sign of our relationship is in Aries, and I was like, oh, that makes mad sense, because we look like a ball of light. When you get close enough, it's like this big heat, heavy fire, but also together as a collective. when you are not on both of our, when you are on our bad side, it's very bad. Like, so we're joined together and have each other's back, like in that type of way. And there's also a very strong balance.
You made it sound like a gang.
It is a gang.
It's a
Very
gang of
bad.
two babies.
Very
Very
bad.
Very bad.
About to get jumped in.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but it's also great too, because if you do look at it as like another person's chart, the person being the relationship. Now, again, with me, because I love the shadow stuff, I'm thinking shadow traits and patterns.
Yeah.
So with this, it's like, okay, an Aries sun, traditional shadow traits and patterns for an Aries sun could look like being reckless, being impulsive, being self-centered, being, childish, things like that, where it's like, okay, so make note of that within the relationship.
Our relationship is all of those things. By the way.
Balance. Even with the Scorpio moon, a shadow traits of a Scorpio moon can look like manipulation, power, control, obsession, things like that. And again, it's not about trying to diminish all the things. It's about transmuting it so that it helps you. Sometimes you do need to manipulate a thought so that you can reframe it in a way that helps you. Sometimes you do need to assert control to move things forward. But again, it's not asserting control over another individual. It's thinking about the situation as a separate entity. Yeah. So it can be very interesting and insightful.
Oh, that was the word I was looking for. Optimizing. I'm very big on like optimizing our relationship, and in the sense of, we're going to be good and we're going to be great, but how quickly can we get to the great part, right? And not in a rush sense, but like how can we get everything out of every single moment?
In Aquarius, analyzing? Yeah. That's new.
It's the Capricorn moon part.
It's the Capricorn moon, and it's very Aquarius of you. I'm trying to see if you also have...
It's also this obsession part. That like once I get obsessed about things,
you hyperfixate.
I can't remember who said that or where I said this, but there was like a friend of ours named Evan. She was telling how she's dating somebody and he's into like painting like these little World of Warcraft like figurines, but it's like so tiny. Those tiny figurines you have to use a magnifying glass looking and then paint very detailed.
Oh, wow, yeah.
It's like when you hone in something on that you have to pay so delicately detailed attention to. You have to obsess in that moment about this one thing, and everything in the world has to like be ignored.
Focus.
Just so you can focus on the meticulous detail of this thing. And that's how I view our relationship or my emotions when it comes to Milah. And she like snickers every time I say I'm obsessed, because obsessed can feel like so like overbearing. But it just means like I'm so detailed and dedicated to the detail.
Devoted.
Yeah, and that's
healthy
what the
obsession, and your limits.
Yeah.
But again, when you're paying attention, you're literally paying a form of currency,
right,
which is your attention, which is your energy, your focus. So when you do allow yourself to focus on something, then of course there is a higher chance of growth. Yeah. That's why, listen, whatever floats your boat when it comes to relationships, if you like it, I love it. When I do get into some, I wouldn't say a debate, but open relationships is a topic that comes up all the time, and never experienced it knowingly. So
not for me.
So, I don't know, but my thing has always been, for me, I truly love and value when I can devote my energy and focus into one thing, because it helps me grow whatever that is. So in my mind, I'm always like, well, I understand that it might work for other people. And obviously that takes a lot of honesty, a lot of communication, a lot of things in order to create a stable foundation. And I think some people have used it as an excuse to do other things, which just defeats the whole idea. But my thing is like, when I tried to date multiple people at once, which was one time in my life, it was the most exhausting thing I've ever experienced. And I was like, I just feel like my energy is so scattered that I'm not seeing growth necessarily, because it's not I'm not watering something. I'm just sprinkling.
Spread thin.
Yeah, it's like here's a spurt of water here and here and here, and that's it. Like for me, like I love dedicating myself to something because I do hyperfixate on stuff. I do get obsessive on stuff. So I'm just like, ooh, what is the thing today that I'm going to focus on?
Capricorns don't be multiple dating people, really. They be like...
Well, what's funny is my Venus is in Aquarius.
Oh, they date a lot of people.
So I always read like, ooh, you're into unconventional relationships.
Yeah.
You're into... And I'm like, I mean, am I? Like, am I?
Where is this person?
Right. Like, but I think for me more than anything, at least what I found out is I really value my relationships in general. So it's not like, oh, romantic relationship, platonic relationships. It's like I treat my friends like I'm dating them.
Right.
The only difference is we're not having sex with each other.
Right.
So to
That's
me,
an Aquarius right there. Conventional relationships, like, oh, we're not having sex, but we're dating, we're going to the movies, doing everything, but you're my friend.
It's like I like to build bonds and connection with people and remembering and exercising different forms of intimacy, which for me is mental intimacy, it's experiential, it's spiritual. So I can see how from the outside looking in, it might be like, dang, like, who is this person she's always hanging out with or who? But for me, it's not an issue because in my mind, I'm like, they're not my person.
Right.
Yeah.
But they're a person I value.
Right.
And just because they're not my person doesn't mean they're in some lower level category. Like right now, I am unattached. So I am going to pour my love into the relationships around me as if they are that love, you know, because it's not solely on the physical aspect. So yeah, we're going on dates.
Yeah.
My girlfriends and I go on dates all the time, and it's beautiful because it's also like you're still getting to experience that love without feeling like, oh, I can't do this until I have a partner.
And there's a level of intimacy that I think we are all kind of like, you know, like Tantra is like, it means weaving, right? Like you said, like mind, body, soul, like, you know, the weaving of all the things. And I think a lot of times we've made such rigid rules around intimacy and especially women, so much value on romantic relationships that we forget that there's a level of like deep love and intimacy that you do get out of, you know, just platonic friend relationships. And even to the point where like I think we forget to like hug our friends and like give deep eye stares and deep hugs. Like I if I can get any of my friends in a corner, I'm always like, let's stare into each other's eyes and like, you know what I mean?
That's
like
soul gaze.
Yeah, like let's sit yum, and then you forget, even at retreats, you know, like being a retreat leader and hosting retreats, you know, this is like you get a bunch of people, you know, that you don't know, but you're there to serve them and to provide intimacy. And like, especially for women, that sometimes we don't get that in a platonic way. And I see how not trans, like how
Transcendental?
Yeah, like how it can really
transcend
someone. I've seen so many transformations.
Okay.
I've seen so many transformations from literally pouring into women on a platonic but deeply intimate level.
Yeah.
Where I'm like giving long hugs in the morning and at night and staring into your eyes and listening, and like those are, and how it changes, like, you know, the chemistry between people and how it changes the chemistry in people individually. And I think we forget that intimacy platonically is also very, very, very it's equally as important as any romantic relationship.
Very powerful. I do an exercise, a soul gazing exercise at my retreats where so simple, where you just literally sit across from someone and you stare at one eye for 2 minutes straight. And the response is mind blowing. But again, because so many of us have sort of mistakenly we think intimacy and we think sex and that's it. And so
we shy away from that.
Right.
And it gets scary. It feels weird.
Right.
And sometimes we're in sexual situations where we're bypassing that first step of intimacy there, like connecting just through eye gaze.
Right.
And so it's like super disconnected, but there's like some foundational things that are missing in both if we're not conscious.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it is definitely recognizing the different forms of intimacy, which hopefully with a partner, you're able to experience all of them. Like, that is the ideal for me in my mind. And again, Aquarius Venus people are notorious for like friend to lover types of situations, which makes sense to me because I'm like, of course, I want my partner to be my friend. If you're not my friend, what are we even doing?
How can I fuck with you? Like, how am I going to forgive you? How am I going to do anything? Because I'm going to keep looking at you as like this perfect person versus my friend who is going to fuck up because you're human and I'm not taking it super personally.
Right. Because if I'm coming into this with, no, you're my romantic partner, unconsciously there are standards and expectations that I'm setting for that title. Yeah. When you're my friend, a lot of those fall away because of what you said. There's a humanity aspect here. I am a firm believer that friendship is the best teacher for unconditional love. I think a lot of people look to romantic partners or family, and to me, there's still an obligatory aspect to that where there are expectations that may not even be expressed. With a friendship, obviously there are certain expectations, but you are consciously and willingly choosing that person every single day. And that's not to say that it's smooth sailing all the time. Friendships have their ebbs and flows like any relationship, but they are such great teachers of how to move through that and how to love someone through different seasons and different versions and how to really water a relationship and show up in a lot of the ways we talked about here. Like, again, this reading can be done for anybody. So it's not just romantic partners, friendships, family, whoever it is. So using that as sort of the foundation to then build upon can help make it stronger. So to me, it's like my partner is just my best friend who I also have sex with all the time.
That's how I be viewing it.
And that is like jackpot. Like, thank you so much. Love this for us.
I'm not sure if that's how like it's an Aquarius thing, but for me, if I can view you as a lover, a partner, and as a friend, then when one of like the assumptions or disappointments that pull up in like as a lover, then I can view you as a friend, right? If you disappoint me or if I see something in you that I might not like as a friend, I can view you and give you that grace as someone that I love and I'm going to be with for the rest of my life. So like I feel like they all help each other out. As I view as like an Aquarius, that I have multiple relationships with you as my partner. You are my intimacy. You are my friendship. You are my lover. Like, and so all of them help give grace to all the other parts of our
Absolutely. Yeah, that was one thing I would actively practice because in the past, I used to get really triggered when someone I was dating wouldn't respond. But if my friends didn't respond, I didn't give a shit. I'm like, okay, like I know I'm going to hear from them.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, it was recognizing, oh, I feel some type of way when it's this person because they're triggering a wound that has to do with that level of connection. My friends, I know they love me. Like, I know I'm going to hear from them. I don't give a shit if you go a couple days. Like, get to it when you get to it. But you, I now hold to a different standard because of what you represent to me and my healing and my psyche. So it's been really interesting to sort of observe that and notice where there are different sort of limitations or standards based on the expectations you set based on the role that you've placed someone.
I've loved this. I really do love that. Now we have a joint birth chart because I'm really going to hone in on that. And I think everybody should really like find one for them and their partner and then start like focusing on what the conjoined birth chart mean and how like you can look at that to help your relationship. I think it's much better than like looking at my own and then going like, okay, well, this is what I need to do. Oh, that didn't work. All right, let me go back to my birth chart so I can just go to our joint one.
As someone who, you know, obviously you're deeply spiritual, you're a witch, and but you've been on since I've met you. I mean, God, I think it's been like 5 years now when you came and did Good Moms in Erica's living room.
Yeah, when the book came out.
No, that was your book came out. So and that was you had done like how many days of celibacy?
I did 3 years.
3 years of celibacy, and that's what we talked about. But I mean, that's a journey in itself, and I just feel like there's a lot to be said and a lot of observation and probably a lot of lessons you've learned through this process, you know, coming back to celibacy, going back to sex. Because I realize like sex is healing, but it also can be wildly like a blindfold too, you know, if we let it be a distraction. So I'm just
absolutely curious. I think for me it was I mean, it depended on the chapter of my life. There was a chapter where it was almost like a way to experience intimacy without being intimate. Weirdly, you know, because I could detach from it.
Yeah, same, which could be harmful.
Very harmful, which is why I was celibate, because I'm like, I am giving my body to someone else as a way to feel connection.
But then you're feeling nothing.
Right.
And so it's confusing your body.
Yeah. Exactly. So afterwards, I'd always be like, what was that for?
Why did I do that?
Why? So that's why I did my celibacy journey, because I really wanted to like go inward and figure out what this was, which was because I was so used to disconnecting from my body. I could have sex with someone, but really not be there.
Not be there at all.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm experiencing connection, which was not connection.
Girl, I know all about this all too well.
Right. So that's been a lot of work for me, is coming back into the body, which then created a completely different experience with sex, and also for me honoring what that really was, because again, from a spiritual perspective, like I was realizing how much energy and like healing, because healing energy and sexual energy are the same thing, how much of that I was giving to people who were not replenishing that for me. So it's like I'm being drained of this energy, I'm being siphoned of this, and I'm not replenishing it either by not being engaged in connections that are able to reciprocate, but also not even doing that for myself. So I definitely had to dig deep into all of that. And then again, I always say like the pendulum swing, because everything's a spectrum. That hypersexuality, which I wouldn't even call it hypersexuality for me, but it's just like that recklessness with it, and detachment from it. Then I swung all the way to the other side, which is the celibacy for 3 years. So now it's like nothing ever.
Right.
Which also, like, it was healing in some respect, but I also had to recognize, am I hiding from something here? Still.
If I avoid this thing, maybe I don't have to deal, like there's ways I'm avoiding this wound that I'm seeking intimacy and affection without actually having to like bypassing the actual intimacy and affection.
Right.
But now I'm going the other way. I'm just not going to do it at all because I don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
Because I would do that. I'd be like, I'm going to get in a relationship because bitches know how to act.
Right. I mean, so I'm big on like attachment theory, and mine, luckily I'm more securely leaned now, but my sort of automatic fallback is fearful avoidant, which is a nice fun bag of anxious and avoidant. So it's like I'm a living contradiction, you guys. Like, it is so mind-blowing to me sometimes. I seek and crave connection so deeply, and yet it scares me so much that I will create situations to justify pushing it away. Yeah. So then
call on it, leave it.
I have a friend like that. I have a friend like that.
Call on it. A lot of people have
Corey's
that.
like that.
A lot of people have that because a lot of times we attract what we like. We push away the things that we want
because it's
so
scary. Well, it scared me, and so. Which then goes back into the friendship aspect. That's a safer way to experience it. But then I also had to recognize that a love language that I constantly sort of overlooked that I didn't realize was important to me was physical touch. And I didn't realize that until my therapist at the time had me create like a vision board for my ideal relationship. And when I did that, I put a lot of words of what I wanted in that energy. And then I chose some pictures just freely. And when I was showing it to her, I noticed that every picture I chose, they were embracing each other in some way. And I was like, oh, fuck, like I need more physical touch in my life. And I don't like being touched unless I feel safe.
Right.
So that's where the discrepancy would happen. Because, I got friends that are like, girl, just be out here. Like, why not have fun? I'm like, no, I get it. I get it. And what I need you to understand is it's not fun for me if I'm not emotionally connected or mentally stimulated. Like, I just am that bitch. Like, I need more than just physical attraction, because when I'm seeing you, but I'm feeling you more than anything. So you could be the most beautiful, gorgeous person in the room, but if what I'm feeling energy-wise is bunk, I'm not
going to be as attracted to you.
It's just not a thing.
It literally shape shifts the way you appear physically.
it
Oh my gosh.
quite tangibly. Like your face will change.
Like, you know what? Suddenly you're not. I thought you were sexy, but you started talking, and wow, you're not
Right.
as sexy as I thought. Your
Even
voice
that.
just fucked it up.
The sound frequency is another
like,
thing.
Like what you're saying is just like I've literally seen it happen. Like be super intrigued by someone, and then they start talking, and I'm literally like I can feel. I just like I zone out.
Yeah.
I don't care anymore.
It's funny. We even see it on TV. We're watching this show called Couple to Throuple. And then the beginning of the show, we were just like, it was the first time seeing everybody. We're like, oh, yeah, they look good. Okay, I can see that couple that are working out. That could work out. And we were looking at this one girl like, wow, she's got these features. She's beautiful. And she turned out to be a bitch. And by like episode 5, I was like, she not even that cute. And Mila's like, no, she's cute. She's just mean.
Yeah. No, it definitely shifts your perception of someone, especially if you're sensitive, which I am. So it's not worth it to me.
And I'm sure as you've leveled up in your spirituality and just evolved as a human, you probably I realized like my hoe days had to come to an end because I became super sensitive to.
Yeah.
I couldn't even pretend anymore. Like I would try to fuck, and I would just be like, "Can you gotta go."
It's really it's hard, and I don't know that. I mean, if you've experienced it, you get it, but I don't think people understand. Like, if I'm with you sexually, I am taking in a lot of your shit. I will start having dreams about people from your life. I will start getting like heightened emotions that aren't mine. Like I'm almost transmuting your own stuff. So that's also why I'm like, I can't be out here because I don't know who they've been with.
Right.
And I'm also taking their stuff. So I get that not a lot of people will get it, but for me, it's just like, unfortunately, that's how it's panned out. And I have to be very discerning about who I share my body with because I gain so much knowledge and wisdom through my body, and sometimes it's shit I don't want. Like it's not mine, and I don't want to carry it.
I got my own shit.
Right. Like I've got enough. Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
We can just look at each other or like, whatever. So yeah, it's been with the heightened sensitivity and spirituality, it definitely creates higher discernment, not even just sexually, but like across the board. Your friendships change, your priorities change, your values change, the food you eat changes, the way you sense the world changes. So it's about honoring that for me. And damn, you asked about advice and we went on a whole other tangent. Take a dick detox if you need one. And then
dick talks.
Right.
We talked about this on Good Moms, probably back then. Like, we've taken. I've never taken a 3-year one, but dick talks is necessary.
It is because you carry it for a long time, and at that time when I was celibate, like there were yoni steams happening. It was very intentional, and so it was a lot of sacral healing for me. And I remember in 2019, which was shortly after I broke my celibacy, the woman who was doing my deep energy clearing, she was like, you have a very powerful body. And I was like, oh, thank you. And then she was like, do men tell you that? And I was like, what? And I was like, do men tell me I have a powerful body? No, they don't. And then she was like, do they run? And I was like, yeah. And then she was like, there's something that you give them when you're with them sexually that they've never experienced before, and it can frighten them. She was like, but you give a lot of creative energy when you're with someone sexually. And then I thought back about some of my previous partners, and damn near every single one would release some sort of project, some creative project after we were together. So I think there was also a part of me that was like, man, I want to give this to you.
Fuck you.
I'm using it for me.
Right.
Like I want to harness my own creative energy.
Right.
So it was really interesting when she said that. And then she was just, telling me to dance more, and like, cause she kept seeing swirls around my hips, and again, finding that balance of not necessarily being so rigid about it, but again, using that energy in a way that aligns with what I know is beneficial for me. So again, the sexual energy is healing energy, is creative energy. So if I'm not physically being intimate, I channel that through my healing work, or I channel that through my creativity.
Right.
You know, it's still in motion because, again, that sacral energy is water. So it's always flowing. It needs to be moving.
Yeah. And this is a disclaimer. Do not DM Bruna if you have a project coming out. If do not fucking dare.
I know.
I'm trying to get in those panties. I heard she make the projects go platinum.
Listen. Oh, no. I know.
Billboard #1 chart.
It's been, and maybe you've experienced this too. That's another thing, is just having to deal with that romanticized, idealized version, that the pedestal that people will put you on. And it's almost like, and now I've gotten really good at sensing it, but when people, specifically men, are just like, they just want to experience, so they want to know what it's like. And it's like, actually,
I'm not for taste testing. This is not Costco.
Right. Like, this is not just for you to say you did.
No.
You know, this is probably an experience, if that's how you're coming at me, that you can't handle anyway. So,
I mean, that part. And you know what? And it's this discriminative awareness. It's like when I know we've been talking for so long.
I know.
The womb is like your intuitive powers, but if you are not connected with it, then you will it'll fuck up your psychic abilities, you know?
Which is why we're doing a lot of womb healing.
Yes. And I feel that deeply. And like, even with my relationship with Orlando, it's like things come up, even when I'm not really asking for them, because it's like, I'm feeling safe. My womb is like opening, and I'm connecting my heart back to like I always say, like these electric lines are coming back, like like it's they're starting to like, you know, like the electricity is starting to come
They're
back,
connecting.
and you know, before I was just like, I'm disconnected from that part of me because I don't need it. It hasn't served me, and I'm gonna fuck you before you fuck me. You know, and it's just, as women, it doesn't serve us, and there's a level of I know that you can have casual sex, but it just has to be aligned with your intuition.
Just, again, it's the intention. There's nothing wrong with having casual sex as long as you're doing it for a reason that, like, you're okay with. And that was what was, for me, I was like, oh, I'm not doing it because I want it. I'm doing it to fill a void of some kind. Yeah. And I need to be honest with myself about the fact that I'm doing this, because that's not in alignment
with what I actually want, or what I say I want. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Well, Bruna, this has been amazing.
Thank you so much. I'm curious to see how long this was. It's probably like 3 hours long.
But I loved every single second of it. And I want you to take this time to, like, please let everybody know where everything is for yourself and where they can find you.
Because your website is dropping today.
Yes, I relaunched my website. So you can find more about me and my services through mysticbrew.com, mysticbru.com. So I have my services on there, as well as more about me and what I do. I have a retreat in Egypt coming up in November. So the deadline to sign up for that, if you're interested, is August 9th. So if you'd like to come with us to Egypt for a week, we're going to Cairo and Luxor. The whole itinerary is planned out. You just got to get your flight and book your spot. And what else? What else do I have going on? That's it for the most part. And then obviously you can follow me on TikTok and Instagram at Mystic Brew.
And where you could probably find, even if there's more stuff, you'll find it right there.
Yeah, because I post readings from time to time as much as I can. I try not to put pressure on myself, Capricorn. So I'm just like, when it feels right, I'll do it.
And for us, this beautiful couple right here, you can find us on Instagram at Hoochie Mom and Dad. Our socials are WH_Orlando Roy. My beautiful almost wife to be is Milah_Map. And do you want to say anything to the people before we go?
Thank you for listening. I love you. Subscribe. Check us out on YouTube. Join Patreon. We have a lot of things coming. And I'll see you at the play party if you're in LA.
Oh, yes. Please pull up to the play party. Yeah, this is Love Like This, the before, during, and after of falling in love. We love you. But la like this.